Hello, I've got Richard Hearing here. Richard and I go back a long way. I'm not really quite sure how to introduce you, Richard.
Yes, we go back more than. No, that's not true. We go back about 45 years or something like that.
Is it as long as
quite
that?
far.
That's
Yeah.
I remember you rejected me from an audition. That's how we met.
It's also I've regretted that every day since.
And after that, I then ended up designing the poster for the play that you rejected me from. But
Everyone
anyway,
has
sorry.
their place.
Yeah. And I was I was certainly made to know mine. But then we did. In fact, I ended up casting you in a play eventually.
Is that right?
Yes,
Yes.
you
Oh,
were
yes.
insane.
Oh, no. Oh, yes. I was
You were
terrible.
Anyway, but we also yes. So in Oxford we had diametrically opposed political views, but I feel our views have got slightly closer together. I feel our
Yes.
views are
Well,
moving.
I suppose we'll find out.
We should.
Yes.
Could we talk for a few minutes about Keir Starmer? Because my hunch would be that if I talk about Keir Starmer, I'm going to be talking about something on your territory. Shall we start with the broad question? Do you like Keir Starmer? Are you pleased there's a Labour Party in power?
Well, in common with most of the rest of the country, I don't like Keir Starmer, but that doesn't say very much because he is an extremely unlikable person. But more precisely, I mean, I've been a Labour Party member for probably about 22 years of my life, but they haven't been consecutive. I was a member until 1994. And I left when Mr. Blair became leader, which is one of the more politically prescient things I've done, because then there was the Iraq War and 1 million people dead and so forth. And then I rejoined, of course, when Mr. Corbyn became the leader, and in 2016. And I'm still a member, and that's only because I'm so insignificant, I think, that I haven't been purged. This interview, of course, may not help that cause.
I don't know. I don't. I'm not sure my channel attracts lots of Labour supporters, but there are people. There's one or two lovely YouTubers who I'm sort of friends with. One of them, a fellow called Maya Tusi, who had me on his channel. And I couldn't believe he actually told me that I was a liberal academic. which of course made me.
You're part of you never realised you were part of the wokerati, Tim.
No. And when I was on the circle just before I got on, somebody said, "Oh, you're woke," and I thought, first of all, I have no idea what that is, and secondly, I'm not sure that's a good thing. But I, of course, I'm terribly flattered to have any attention at all. So to be told that I'm a liberal academic at least confirms one part of my qualification. And to be woke, it's better than being told that I'm sleepy, which after you get past the age of 60, sleep is a thing that sort of assails you sort of every minute of the day. Really, I went to sleep in one of my own lectures.
Have I told you done that actually? Yeah, I think I might have done that.
You didn't sleep in one of my lectures. No, no. It was a very hot afternoon in Russia, and I'd been taken out for a rather boozy lunch with, and the meat was disgusting. It turned out to be bear. And the week before, I'd gone to the same Siberian restaurant. I'd been taken out again by I think it was the rector and his wife of the university. And the week before, it was venison, which I didn't mind so much. But I thought, if I go out again, I'm going to get mice. I feel as if I was gradually moving my way through the canon of Disney characters, Bambi, Baloo, But it was very strange, and to try and wash it down, I took slightly too much vodka. And it was in the middle of the day. It was a very hot day, and people who haven't been to Russia don't understand that there is heat, and there's both heat and there's snow in Russia. But it was a very hot day, and I was lecturing, and I was sitting down because I thought that was the grander thing to do, and I didn't have notes. And I gradually heard this voice getting slower and slower, and then it stopped. I was quite relieved. And then I woke up, and I saw all these eyes looking down at me, and I thought, I have no idea where I am. I have no idea what I'm talking about, and I'd clearly been asleep, and no one was rude enough to say anything.
I'm a type 1 diabetic, and sometimes that puts me into a comatose state, and that did happen in a class, I think it was a group of 7-year-old Kazakh children, I think, and
Yes.
they were so lovely. They insisted on force feeding me their lunch, which I didn't need after the first one.
I would say yes to chocolate any day, but anyway, look, back to Keir Starmer, because
yes.
I'm sort of concerned. I'm concerned about Keir Starmer. Because first of all, I don't believe that everybody is opposed to him in the country, and as somebody like me coming from slightly more central conservative, which doesn't exist anymore, I have no party. To Keir Starmer, I think this man has surrounded himself with quite an efficient cabinet, and they're actually getting things done in a way that the last conservative governments, certainly since Cameron, have got nothing done. I'm a little bit concerned about some of the things they've got done. The winter fuel allowance worries me greatly. The 2 children thing worries me greatly. And I feel there's a sort of Jack Straw oppressive authoritarianism on the cusp coming through, about which we can talk. But I think the bigger problem is, so when I look at political issues, whether they're national, whether they're international, I think, okay, the political thing is something we can sum up. The legal thing is something we can sum up. But now let's look at the ethical thing and look at the people themselves. And when I look at Starmer, what comes across is a squalid mess with the donations. I can't believe that Labour has got into so much into the sort of level of sleaze that it took the Conservative Party 14 years to acquire.
I think it was surprising, even for people who are quite hostile to Keir Starmer, such as myself, being on the left of the Labour Party. I think it was a surprise to all of us, their inability to see that this would look completely venal. And just because they're supposed to be masters of optics, they're supposed to be masters of lots of things, which they clearly are not. Making the right noises to the financial city and so forth has been a priority for them. So those kinds of optics. But the fact that they couldn't see that getting a £20,000 apartment for your son or whatever is just looks bad is quite astonishing. But I do think, to dig a bit into the Labour Party in its recent history, we can see where that might come from. I mean, the Labour Party was hugely solvent, under Jeremy Corbyn, because it had 500,000 members, without taking any large donations. Once you make every effort to jettison, a large number of those members, obviously your income's gone down hugely. Mm-hmm. And so the Labour Party is in danger of being insolvent. They also, because of their desire for vengeance and some innate viciousness, the Labour right took on things which were extremely expensive, like they tried to find out who leaked the document with all the poisoned statements from the officers and so forth, about my MP Diane Abbott and so forth, then MP, they tried. They spent, I think, £4 million on a legal case where the lawyers told them this probably will not win, and things like this. So they, I think it's important to understand that they're not just machine-like managerial types, but they also have a tremendous animus against the left. And what's interesting about Starmer, I think, is because he's such a sort of grey, passionless individual, the only time where he seems to talk with passion is when he's attacking the left. And that's rather sad, because he has a huge majority, and he could tolerate some dissent in his party, as actually Blair did. Yes. I mean, I don't want to underestimate the amount of fixing that there was of the Labour Party under Blair and under Blair's leadership leading up to the '97 election, but nevertheless, he was even prepared to give jobs to some soft leftists, and which hasn't happened in a single case with Keir Starmer. I suppose you could maybe argue Ed Miliband, and then you wonder how long is he going to be there. And to put up with people like Jeremy Corbyn and Diane Abbott rebelling all the time with things that they didn't agree with, because it didn't really make any difference. And there's this weird kind of insecurity that they have. As being a member of the Labour Party is a very strange experience. Because of the nature of our electoral system, you have this huge party of the broad left, which is the only way has been really the only way of getting anyone elected. Arguably, that changed with the last election slightly. We'll have to see how that plays out, because it was so focused on one issue, i.e. Gaza. But Corbyn himself was able, because of his strong following in his constituency, was able, for instance, to buck the two-party system. After he was monstrously treated by his own by the party he'd been a member of. And what's interesting is you then enter this strange organisation. I think this is different from the Tories, actually, which is really at least two parties. There are two groups of people who have very little in common with each other.
I think that's exactly like the Tories as well. But
it's true of the Tories over Brexit, right? You had Remainers and you had Brexiteers.
Yes.
But now you have everyone's a Brexiteer, including Keir Starmer himself. I mean, Starmer engineered a kind of sabotage of the Labour Party effectively by making up a second referendum policy on the hoof, actually, without permission of his leader, who was trying to kind of negotiate a path to not alienate all of those Northern and Midlands seats, which Labour depended on, who'd voted quite strongly for Brexit. And Starmer utterly sabotaged that. But as soon as he was in power, of course, as soon as he was the leader, of course, he jettisoned all of that and became a Brexiteer. Now, so there's that's not where the issue. I mean, the leadership contest of the Tories is interesting, isn't it? Because there was a very good article by the Guardian journalist Aditya Chakraborty, and I hope I can I hope I can use a slightly rude word on your show.
You can.
But where he talked about there being two types of leadership candidate: the morons and the bastards.
Oh, and is that a rude word? I thought that was a technical description. For
instance, they don't all divide down that line. But in Kemi Badenoch, for instance, is an interesting case because she talks like a moron but walks like a bastard. She's actually a neoliberal, as has been revealed to her damage actually during the party conference. With every interview that she gave, she was against the minimum wage. She was against, she was against maternity pay and all these kind of disastrous policies. So she started talking like the bastard that she really is. Whereas before, she's played the kind of culture war thing against asylum seekers and so forth.
I think she's still against asylum seekers.
Oh, absolutely. And so she sits astride, and what they're trying to do is sit astride these things.
Yes. It's very disturbing because my reading of the Conservative Party problem is that either it splits and the people on the far right go off to reform, in which case the Conservative Party ceases to be the opposition and the Lib Dems move in, which I think would be very interesting. Or it merges with reform in some form, either a loose federation or an actual pact, and then it is never electable again. And once again, as an opposition, it then becomes incompetent. It becomes introspective and inefficient, and that is bad for democracy, or it's bad for our democracy, because it. Again, you look at the issues. I tend not to. I tend to look at the characters, and I tend to think, you have your Marxist historical approach. This is movements and ideas. I think no, this is individuals who are soiled with corruption in various forms. I mean, if you mentioned the 20,000 for did you say for accommodation or was it for his son? I can't remember.
It was for his son, wasn't it?
Yes. Well, that if you take one piece of information, it's for his son. If you take what he registered in the House of Commons, it's for accommodation, and he seems to have used that flat for himself as well. But if it's for his son, if he's making a promise to his son not to jeopardize his GCSEs because of an election, and he's going to take a donation of £20,000. Is it £20,000? It is £20,000 for that period of time. He might just as well. That's effectively private education. It's fees, and then this first thing about the VAT on private education. It doesn't affect the people who are paying for Eton or Harrow. The people like Boris and Cameron, who can be so dismissive of principles of discretion, as demonstrated by Boris's latest memoir. I can't remember what it's called now. Is it Deluge or something? Unleashed. But I mean, it's extraordinarily indiscreet. But he demonstrates in that he has no. He has no. You remember? Yeah. He demonstrates he cannot be trusted. He reveals stuff about the Queen's health, which would have come across his desk. It would have been there on his desk because he's the Prime Minister, and he reveals it. It's totally different to someone like Giles Brandreth gossiping, because he's not the Prime Minister. He was not the Prime Minister. It's shocking, and
yes.
I'm shocked. It's not a sort of monarchical thing. It's about the fact that this man could not be trusted, and so those people are not going to be affected by the VAT because they'll always have money. It's the people who perhaps haven't managed to sort out their paperwork to establish that they have disabilities of some sort. Well, it's not STEM, is it? What's it called? I should know because I've been in schools as a journalist. SEND. Yeah, they're on the SEND spectrum. But many people who clearly qualify, it takes about 2 years to be diagnosed, and even once they're diagnosed, the state system isn't really very well equipped to deal with them.
And I know my son is going through that right now. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, yeah, I mean he's fine.
Yeah, but nevertheless, it's tough. I mean, if children can get into the state system, then actually windows of opportunity emerge, because, for example, the top universities don't favour the private school system. People have come through the private school system anyway, and what worried me in the past about the state system, and I've taught in it now, is that there tend to be a sort of dampening down of expectations. If you work hard, you might get a D. But now there is a general consensus that people should be encouraged to get to do as well as they can. But while we've got the system of education that we've got a limited range of subjects and oversized classes. We should be using technology. We should be importing classes using computer screens and stuff, importing information so that teachers can do the job of inspiring and monitoring and mentoring children in their classrooms, which means in effect we could have 2 or 3 subjects going on at the same time in the same class. But and that's a demonstration that we had with COVID, and it's not being taken forward in classrooms at all. But I think this VAT thing is appalling, and to bring it on in the middle of the school year is vicious. So there will be children who are facing GCSEs or A levels who suddenly find that their parents can't pay, and they're pulled out of education. They then have to slot into another school, let's say a state school, that isn't teaching the same syllabus, that isn't teaching the same books.
I didn't realise that it kicked in immediately. Obviously, it should kick in the following academic year.
It's supposed to kick in January.
Oh wow!
Which is which I just think is hateful. It's nasty politics. And similarly the pension fuel allowance.
Yes.
This is nasty politics, because even if you raise the pension, that's not going to happen until April, which means pensioners going into what is already proving to be a harsh winter, even now, are going to be seriously struggling over this period. And it's knee-jerk politics.
Yes. Vis-a-vis the private schools issue, I remember having a conversation about this a few weeks back, and I realised I was wearing a T-shirt under my shirt, which I lifted because the T-shirt has the slogan, "I'm literally a communist." So I think I have to. I'm kind of irrelevant for that discussion. But though obviously it shouldn't prejudice young people in education.
Well, from that point of view, Richard, we're I've taught in Russia. I was teaching Russian teachers how to teach. And do you know, in Russian schools you're not allowed to put your hand up above this position here. You can't do this. You have to only do this. And during a lesson, and this is communist, you have to stop your lesson every hour to have physical. I was going to say physical excitement. That's not what I meant. Physical education. You have to have a demonstration of physical education in the middle of a lesson. I thought that was a bit beyond me. But the idea of communism is that everybody has an education.
Yes.
And I think we would agree on that. Everybody should have an education to achieve whatever standards they possibly can.
Equal opportunity in education.
On opportunity, and that, but that means we have to rethink how we deliver that education. But yes, go on.
More generally on the nastiness. One of the experiences of being in the Labour Party is you realise that a lot of the people on the Labour right, I'm sure some of them are charming. I don't know that many. They tend to avoid us.
No, I don't know very many either. I know Piers Corbyn. He's on the left, I think.
Sort of, yes.
Yes. I mean, even in Labour Party circles, he's considered a bit loopy.
Absolutely. Corbyn's son, Tommy, said that every family has a Piers, yes, which I think is true as well.
Yes, well,
But anyway,
what I find so extraordinary is every time I meet him, he remembers the last conversation, which is quite a long time ago. And
wow.
I met him at the I met him at the 2019 election. He was sitting in front of me and making a lot of noise, and I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, "Piers, you're being very noisy." He said, "Oh yes, and I've got some more paperwork for you." It was quite extraordinary, and we had cameras so trained all around us, and I just thought this is madness and terribly
Mm.
sweet.
So yes, they're quite a nasty bunch, generally speaking. Um,
And
and
have you looked at the figures? Have you looked at the figures about these donations?
uh, yes, well, I know some some headlines from it. Yes,
Because it just goes on, and but everybody seems to seems to have got their nose in the trough, right down to Rachel Reeves. I think she took 7,500 for dresses, but Starmer's wife had a £5,000 professional shopper or something, personal shopper. Which there's a madness to this.
yes.
£2,485 for multiple glasses. I mean, how many glasses do you want to wear? Well, actually, after
It's
60, you
quite.
wear quite a lot. How many glasses do you have,
I can
Richard?
never find them.
No,
I've
no,
got
no, me
about
too.
6 pairs. I'm going to revive some old frames which I like, but I tried them on the other day, and it was just a blur.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yes.
I've got a pair that I can only wear in the street because anything else they're completely blurred, but they're quite nice.
Yeah, but yes. So it, uh, there's tremendous culture of bullying,
Yes,
in
it's
the
the
Labour
bullying
Party. Um,
which is the important
uh,
issue.
yeah,
But it's also present in
and
the Conservative Party. I think it's Westminster rather than
mm,
party political.
yes, it probably comes from the MPs down. That's correct. Although there are some traditional sort of pretty um, uh, pugilistic factions of the Labour Party. For instance, there's one. She used to be called Labour First, but they've joined with the besuited Blairites now. There were two main right-wing factions previously: Progress and Labour First. Labour First were from the sort of rather thuggish trade union right,
Yes.
who were used to rigging elections against strikes and all those kinds of things. So they were absolutely ready to control a political party in the same way. And the besuited Blairites who were who mainly funded by Sainsbury, I think.
Oh
And
yes.
yeah, they joined together to become Labour to Win, which is an annoying name. And now I think they're called Labour Together or something, which is bizarre because they expel anybody who doesn't agree with them. But anyway, the yes, so that becomes immediately apparent. I mean, a very nice elderly member of my ex-party. I was chair of my branch before I moved. Went to our new constituency party, which I hadn't been to, meeting, the CLP meeting, and he said the bullying was just awful. In just a regular members meeting.
Yeah. But
Um,
it's difficult when people
and
think that they are absolutely right.
hmm,
So you find bullying. There's appalling bullying in Reform. I remember seeing bullying directly in UKIP, and certainly bullying in the Conservative Party. But is there racism as well? Because in my experience, you get bullying and racism. You get it in all forms: anti-Semitism, Islamophobia. Is this? Have you seen
I
this?
think that's a complicated question where you have to be careful what you say, because I think the overwhelming thing is political difference. and then whether that you might be a black female MP. It's fine to be a black female MP in the Labour Party, as long as you're not a left-wing black female MP.
Right.
And that is the crucial factor which makes you persona non grata. Okay, so
Diane Abbott was not actually a victim of misogyny. She was a victim of just having the wrong the wrong part of the party, being in the wrong part of the party.
She would not be a target. She would not be a target otherwise. That is definitely true. But of course, then misogyny and what's called misogyny noir, is used. Those expressions of disgust that they had, in those revealed conversations, are classically what we would call misogyny noir, which is a term a neologism I'm not terribly comfortable with, but it's quite useful. I'm just not sure about the French bit. But it's definitely a thing, right? But it's only used because of that. I mean, obviously, most in terms of the so-called anti-Semitism crisis, which was nothing of the kind. Again, anti-Semitism was being used as a way of attacking the left.
Wasn't the left really anti-Zionist or anti-current government of Israel? Because
exactly
back in the day when we were at Oxford, Labour was extremely supportive of the state of Israel,
and has been and is now. Right?
Yes,
under Starmer, of course, and that's the continuity
but in a different way
since the foundation of the state of Israel. So that's the absolute continuity, and then there are always members who are pro-Palestinian, and there would be probably vigorous discussions about that. But what you didn't have was the kind of play acting that we had. I mean, in my own party, in Hackney at that time, we would have dramatic exits by right-wing members who may or may not have been Jewish, who because of supposed anti-Semitism, which had not happened, so it was all a scam directed at the left, and the crucial fact there is that in Starmer's Labour Party, you had a 5 times greater chance of being expelled if you were Jewish than if you were not Jewish. The statistics show this, and who they were expelling for anti-Semitism or enabling anti-Semitism or bringing the party into disrepute around anti-Semitism were left-wing Jews. Right. Who are of course the biggest enemy to newspapers like the Jewish Chronicle and so forth. The biggest enemy are the left-wing Jews. They're the most threatening to the Zionist project. Yes. And that several friends of mine have been expelled from the party, and it was traumatizing for them. Some of them were very elderly. Yes. It was traumatizing, a party they'd been in all of their lives.
Do you think it's possible is it possible that these monolithic parties have seen their day, and that what we've got today is the Labour Party as a sort of coalition of different groups, and the Conservative Party is a coalition of different groups? Would it not be better to have a sort of proportional representation, elect these smaller groups, and then have the coalition once the election has taken place? It would be more honest, wouldn't it?
Well, I said to people before the election, like members of my family who just tend to ask me sort of questions about politics, because they're not particularly political themselves. Or I said my very simple statement was, I would love to live in a democracy where my vote counted. It should be the most basic requirement, right, for any liberal democracy. And we know. I mean, socialists, it turned out, were living on borrowed time within the Labour Party, and now there's comparatively few of us left. But there's a book, I think, called "The Party with Socialists in It," about the Labour Party, which is a good description, I think. It's always had socialists in it, although it's never been a socialist party. And that's purely a result of the electoral system. Now,
Yes.
If we were able to have a socialist party, we might get 15% of the vote, or we might only get 10% of the vote. But with 10% of the vote, we would have 65 MPs if that was proportional, which is a great more socialists in Parliament than we currently have.
Yes.
Of course, it would mean a lot more of the far right as well. But that's democracy.
That's
right?
the price you pay. Yes.
Exactly.
But at least people would be properly identified. You could say,
Yes.
you'd know who to avoid in the corridor. And people would move around. I'm sure people would be crossing the floor from one party to the other.
Exactly.
But again, that would be views change, and this sort of massive tribalism that we've got at the moment is not really very healthy.
I don't know. Yes, the tribalism thing is interesting. I don't know who is really tribal in the sense of devotion to a political party. I think we're seeing a what do you call it? A sort of liminal space between Reform UK and the Conservatives at the moment, where people are feeling they can maybe cross one way or the other. I mean, Farage may eventually go the other way, of course, if he sees that the time is right.
I'm sure he will, because Farage is really anxious simply for power. But I think the Conservative Party has moved heavily to the right.
Yes.
And the Labour Party has moved quite far to the right as well.
Yes.
And I remember on many an occasion I've talked with people and I realise I'm to the left of the current Labour Party in certain issues, which I never thought I would be. I don't think I've changed.
No.
But
no, it really has gone very far.
It is worrying.
It's called the Overton window, isn't it? And what was very interesting in the brief Corbyn interlude,
Yes.
was it 4 or 5 years, is that the Overton window really moved quite far to the left.
Yes.
There were certain things that the Tories could not say anymore. And we discovered that there was a swathe of, for instance, working class voters who actually didn't care about immigrants. But actually, for one thing, they're not white themselves, and secondly, they responded to being offered something meaningful for their lives. Hence the 2017 election.
I think. Yes. Could sorry, Rich, because we're getting a bit over time, but could I suggest that we reconvene in about a week, and focus absolutely on immigration, because I think I would be very interested to hear your view on immigration, and I have an awful feeling that our views are going to coincide. But
well, I can give you. I mean, the reason that we have,
don't give me the view now. Don't give me it now, because we need to signal excitement and more to come. I think. Let's tease us with some of your views.
I'll leave you with an image of the charismatic and forthright figure of Yvette Cooper. Sorry, that's cruel.
Yes, right, okay. Is she interchangeable with Priti Patel? I hope not.
Question. Well, we're not supposed to go there, are we? So I'll now shut up.
Right. Okay. Yes. But can we open this Pandora's box next week? Probably at
Yes,
about the same sort
yes,
of time. I'd really enjoy it, Richard, and I
yes.
think and as I say, I tease. I'm still looking for a political party. I fear
Mhm.
I fear the far left is not likely to be my home, but I think we should explore the issues and the
Mm.
characters. But
Yes.
did we finally get to grips with what we think of Mr. Starmer? I don't think we did really.
Okay. So um, I now let's let's try not to generalize about boring people. Okay,
Yes.
because I know some quite dull people who are extremely nice. And because they're modest, they sort of know their limitations, and I'm sure some people find me quite dull. But the so in that, when you're in that situation, you have to know your limitations, right?
Hmm.
And try and be nice to people. And there is another type of boring person who is bitter, and I think Starmer, when he was young, I think he always sucked the oxygen out of the room. And when he came in, people thought, oh my God, it's Starmer. Um, and that can have a very um, uh, damaging effect on someone.
I think we knew one of his school friends, Richard, a fellow called
Oh,
Andrew
really?
Sullivan. Yeah. Do you remember Andrew
Okay.
Sullivan? Who's
Yes, I
slightly
do.
far on, slightly on the right. He published the New Republic in America, but there's another one
Oh,
called Norm. I think he's now known as Norm Cook, but he was at the time, I think, at school, known as Quinton, who's now known as Fatboy Slim, and the three
oh
of them were
yes.
together. So Norm is a delight. Andrew is. Andrew wouldn't hang around with someone who was boring. So I think if Keir Starmer has moved through a boring phase, it's post school, and
Uh-huh.
it's something that happened to him as he entered, maybe while he was a lawyer. Is this his
I,
is this
I
his
mean,
carapace? Is this his protection?
the astonishing thing is um, trying to. We ran a little campaign inside our constituency party at the time of the leadership elections after the Corbyn defeat in 2019. Um, and although the left wing candidate was very lovely, but not experienced enough to do that job, I think most people thought. We nevertheless were going to vote for her rather than Starmer, um,
Hmm.
because um, because we you only had to look at his history as director of public prosecutions.
Hmm.
Julian Assange was televised yesterday, um,
And Starmer was
explaining
involved in that case, wasn't he?
One of Starmer's aides wrote to the at a crucial point. One of Starmer's aides wrote to the Swedish authorities and said, "Don't you dare get cold feet," because the Swedes were saying, "Well, this has been a long time. We only wanted to interview him anyway. Let's just drop it." So one of Starmer's aides, when Starmer was DPP, wrote to the Swedes and said, "Don't get cold feet." In other words, they knew it was a political case, and they needed to keep Assange locked up or extradite him to the US. And there's these mysterious meetings. They're mysterious because the DPP has, against all common practice, destroyed the minutes when Starmer went to the United States several times. And there's no minutes of these meetings and what was discussed, but this was around this time. Um, and you can imagine, therefore, it's not difficult to imagine what those conversations were about.
Yeah.
So we really have a very, very pernicious person. Um, and uh, and we already knew all of this, but bless them, the left of the Labour Party, people don't deal with defeat very well, you know. I'm a sort of hardline socialist, so I'm used to it. But I'm kind of inured to it. But so they all said, oh, let's go with the man in the suit who says he'll keep all the policies, but we'll just present them better. When that manifestly was not true, manifestly that was a lie, and we did actually win the vote in our party, and the Labour right were all, I remember them all being lined up as you went in with like leaflets. It took place in the Rio Cinema. They were very upset because they thought they knew that Starmer was their man, which should have been enough for the left to know, really. But they all voted for him, you know, or a large number of them voted for him. And that's sad. I mean, people need to look at the history of the records and the personalities.
We come back to it. So we agree. Personalities. Yeah. Personalities over policies. Look, Richard, we'll come back in a week's time and have a look specifically at small boats, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
I would like your view. I've still got a copy of Open Borders on my shelf.
Theresa Hayter's book.
Yes, which I think you gave me. In fact, I think I've got more than one copy, I think now.
Yes, I was a friend of Theresa's. Yes. Yeah. Excellent book.
Right, excellent book. Okay. I don't agree with much of it, but I think it's important to be informed. Right, we will talk again in about a week. Thank you very much. Bye.